Phase two of the pitching process is what we call the power angle. Traditional baseball coaches have referred to this phase as the balance position, but I want to get us away from that mindset. And you might have also heard of this phase as the big shift or the lift and thrust phase. But we like to call it a power angle because we want our pitchers to really be in the mindset of delivering as much energy as possible into the baseball as powerfully as we possibly can. So we're going to gain momentum towards home plate with this idea of creating an angle as we leg lift. Before we go into that phase, I want to look at what traditional baseball coaches have taught first and the reasons why we need to get away from that line of thinking. Many pitching coaches teach with conventional wisdom, meaning that they're teaching things that have always been taught for years and years regarding leg lifting. And oftentimes you'll hear these teachers saying things to their students such as, hey, stay back when you leg lift, or stop at the top, find a balance point, stay over the rubber, and things like that. And oftentimes they'll have them do drills where when they leg lift, they make them pause with their leg in the air, and they'll hold that position for a long period of time just to teach them, hey, this is a balance point. But what they're not realizing is that they're killing momentum and power. Nothing kills momentum and power more than stopping. And getting to a balance point really stalls your momentum. And what we want is our pitchers to be able to leg lift and drive or develop momentum towards home plate as they're leg lifting. And if you take a look at the three pitchers on the screen, Dontrelle Willis, Kerry Wood, and Mark Pryor, who all had really big arms and could throw real hard, but notice how they all stay back. They're in a perfect balance position. You can see a line straight up and down from their posting foot to their head, so they're not developing any momentum towards home plate. And interestingly enough, all three had serious health issues with their arm at some point in their career. And that is what we're trying to avoid. A lack of momentum puts a lot of strain on a pitcher's arm, especially in the elbow area, which can lead to damage. And we want to promote the health of our pitchers, and by developing momentum, the pitchers will be able to take some of that strain off their arm. And it's scary to think how hard these three pitchers on the screen could have thrown if they developed more momentum towards home plate. They all threw in the upper 90s at some point in their career, and I think they could have thrown even harder if they got into a power angle instead of a balanced position. By comparison, take a look at these four pitchers: Roy Halladay on the left, Mariano Rivera, Randy Johnson, and Greg Maddux on the right. All four of these pitchers, when they leg lift, they begin leaning with their front hip towards home plate to build momentum. And you can see from the lines that are drawn, no line is straight up and down. From the posting foot to the head or the chin of the pitcher, you'll see that it's on an angle. Randy Johnson's is a little more extreme. Roy Halladay's is a little bit beyond straight up and down, but all four of them do have momentum towards home plate, which is why we call it the power angle. Good pitchers will get their front hip about 2 feet away from the pitcher's plate at the top of their leg lift. And if you look at these four guys, they do just that. They're going forward as they lift, and also notice for the most part their chins are down and their shoulders are square to the target. So they are developing an incredible amount of energy towards home plate, which is actually going to allow them to release the ball closer to home plate, which will impact perceived velocity, which we'll get to another time. But there is no staying back. The motion all happens towards home plate, and the core must be strong to be able to execute this lift and thrust phase. Now, all leg lifts are different. The higher you can lift your leg without losing your posture, meaning where your head is in the center of gravity, the more momentum you can build or generate towards home plate. So that's the idea. And when you teach a player a leg kick, you have to have them do a natural one, and you can make adjustments according to what they're doing. But the higher they can lift their leg while keeping their posture and being able to get their leg down in time is the more desirable to pick up velocity. Here's a couple tips when teaching the leg lift. Tell your pitcher to direct their knee straight up, even towards an armpit. They can even turn their foot towards second base, which actually will help get their momentum down the hill more by thrusting their front hip forward. But ultimately, we've got to be able to keep our posture when we do that, keeping our head over the center of gravity and having it only travel towards home plate. So let's take a look at some pitchers in the big leagues that create good momentum on a power angle. Here's our boy Jacob deGrom, and you can see when he goes from the windup, or even if we had a shot of him from the stretch, the minute he leg lifts at the top of his lift, look at that angle. He's leaning towards home plate while keeping his head over his center of gravity. You can see his front hip is really driving towards the plate. He actually has a little inward turn with his lead foot towards second base. Notice though that his shoulders are square on the target and his chin is down. He doesn't turn his whole body towards second base. And this creates really good momentum. And now we'll watch as he leaves this phase and finishes his pitch. Here's Greg Maddux late in his career. As he goes into leg lift, you'll notice his power angle. When he was younger, his angle used to be a little more extreme than it is now, but you can still see that he creates momentum towards home plate by leading that front hip down the hill. And the line right there shows you from the posting foot through his head, there is an angle, and he's developing momentum down the hill. His front foot doesn't turn inward towards second base like deGrom's does, but that's okay. And as he releases out of this position, he drives right down the hill. Here's a side shot of Aroldis Chapman in spring training. Look at his leg lift. Wow, he really gets his leg high and creates a really nice angle from his posting foot to his head as he drives towards home plate. Look at that, he keeps his chin down, his shoulders locked in on the target, which is the catcher's glove, but he really drives that front hip forward. Here's Rivera at his leg lift, and you can see he creates a real nice angle towards home plate as well. Again, chin down, shoulders locked in on the target. He has a little bit of an inward rotation with his foot. It's not his knee, but his foot towards second base. But he develops a real nice power angle as he gets ready to go into his stride and release, and his eyes are on the target. Here's how he finishes. In perfect form with head always over the center of gravity. By contrast, here's Steven Matz of the Mets. Now watch when he leg lifts. There's a straight line from his posting foot to his head, which is the ultimate balance position technique that is taught often. And he has a history of arm troubles in his early career. And my belief is that if he developed more momentum towards home plate, he'd take strain off his arm and be able to deliver more energy into the baseball. And he already throws very hard, and I think he could throw harder while still remaining injury free. So that's phase 2 of the pitching movements, which is the power angle, trying to create energy and momentum towards home plate while we lift our leg, keeping our head over our center of gravity. Stay tuned for part 3.